Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Toby G, and this is how to draw Andy. Andy is our lovable main character. He's goofy, loud, and loves attention, but he also uses humor as a coping mechanism, which means that he tends to act like he doesn't take anything very seriously. His dream is to become a musician. He plays the acoustic guitar, the drums, and the trumpet. But even though he has really grand ambitions, both as a musician and as a superhero, he also has a fondness for complaining about any little amount of effort. He's definitely the character I based the most on myself. His main motivation for wanting to be a superhero at the beginning of the first season isn't really helping people, although he is fundamentally a kind person. He just really wants superpowers, like pretty much anyone else would. And then he gets them, and he has to figure out what to do with them. Eventually, he does come to appreciate the impact that his powers have and can have, and he's probably the character that grows the most over the course of the first season, which makes sense because he's also the youngest. Okay, so now that we have a sketch done, I'm going to show you how to draw Andy. So this is Andy, he's our main character. Every character in the show, at least on Photoshop, in a 16 inches by 9 inches document, is the lines are 15 with pressure sensitivity obviously on. So the line thicknesses can get as thick as that or as thin as that, but for the most part they'll be pretty thick. 15 isn't obviously extremely thick, but thicker than a lot of other animated cartoons. So we're gonna ink in this one right here, just because I want to go over how you draw the face. So the most important part of this character obviously is the face. We're actually going to start by widening this out a little bit because Andy's a bit chubbier than I drew him here. I'm going to see if just stretching it will work, but yeah, actually that looks pretty good. I do want to do a bit of each, so when I'm not quite happy with the proportions I've drawn a character in, I'll go in and I'll take whatever part I don't like, select it, sorry, sometimes my tablet glitches, and I'll select warp, and that way I can change the proportions slightly without completely changing the design, and without making the lines a lot thicker. Sometimes if you play with it too much, it'll make the lines too thick, but it's better than just full-on free transform. So that looks a little bit better. He's a little bit shorter and chubbier, which is closer to how I want the character to look in the film. Obviously, I have a pretty good idea of what these characters should look like, but as I'm drawing the turnarounds, that's when I'm really deciding how it should look in the final animation. So I'm making little decisions and tweaks as I go. So we've changed that up a bit, and we have a new layer. The most important thing is the face. So we're going to start with that. This is an on-model drawing of him. This is the first completely on-model drawing I've done of him. So any rules I followed here in terms of how I draw him, I have to follow here, or else I need to change it there. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with how this looks, so it's how I'm going to go from now on. So I like to start with his little baubles of hair here. I'm going to change that to black. He used to have 3, now he has 4. When I redesigned the character, I decided to go with 4. It just looked better on the new design. See here, that line actually ended up being pretty smooth, and I like that, but it didn't quite connect, and I want it to connect, so instead of redrawing it again, I'm just going to warp it until it connects, and then there might be a little bit of a fix needed, but that's actually looking pretty good, and you can see it kind of thickened the line a bit, so I'm just trying to correct for that, and then usually there'll be kind of a little bit of an issue where the lines starts and ends, so I just erase that as cleanly as I can, and that looks pretty good. And his whole face actually comes down a little bit pointier than that, so I'm gonna warp it again. What did I, oh, I accidentally clicked perspective. You know, that actually kind of works though. I mean, not what I really meant to do, but that's fine. Nah, I actually don't like that. I'm gonna undo it. Ugh. See, yeah, my keyboard shortcuts reset like a week ago for some reason. I have no idea why. It happened across all of my Adobe programs, and I had them really specific to my tastes, and I can't remember exactly how I had it. I had Control Z in a very specific way, and I've tried to put it back, but I can't get it to work. So it's very frustrating for me because I Control Z a lot. So we're just gonna make his chin a little bit, come to a little bit more of a point. And you can kind of see here that the thickness of the line is kind of losing its integrity in a way that I don't really want, so I'm probably going to go in and draw back over that, reconnect that line best I can. See, this is why I'm not an animator, because I take way too much time with every drawing. Although, to be fair, this is really important to take as seriously as I can and be as careful as I can, because my animators are going to look at this image and this is going to be the reference for how to draw this character on model for the entire animation. So if there's one thing I want to get looking exactly the way I have it in my head, it's these drawings right here. Come on. There we go. Okay. Actually, let me thicken it up a little bit, And this is a lot of my drawing process is just, you know, drawing, like doing strokes, kind of praying, and if they don't come out right, I just undo it and do it again. I don't know how I feel about that. Let me move this up so I can hide it easily. Yeah, that's pretty okay. That's good for now. It's actually a lot thicker in the other one, so I'm gonna go over here again, and I'm gonna go more slowly and harder, so that and you can see it kind of gets a little bit warbly, and that's why I actually am planning on doing most of this, in Fire Alpaca, because Fire Alpaca has a good smoothing thing, but I want to do the turnarounds in Photoshop just because it's easier of a program for me to use personally, and gosh. And it's so much smoother here. How did I get it so smooth? See, my drawing is so inconsistent. I can never draw the same day to day, and it's very frustrating. Sometimes I do a good draw. Sometimes I do a bad draw. Yeah, that's pretty okay for now. Alright, let's do the hair. Just get it out of the way, because the hair is always a little tricky to draw. Oops. So, the hair goes as follows. He has these sideburns on the sides of his head, obviously, sideburns. And those are kind of a defining part of his design, is those sideburns. Those are what kind of make his character look different and set him apart. They're one of my favorite parts of his hair, but I just really like his hair in general. I mean, I don't enjoy drawing it at all because it's very hard to draw, but once I get it good, it looks really nice. But yeah, his hair is very tricky to draw, even for me. I usually just keep doing it until I get it right, playing around with it. There's kind of like a balance that needs to be found. Let me try to keep these ear sizes consistent. Oh, gross. Okay, I'm gonna redraw it. That's a little better. Sorta. I'm not used to drawing with an audience, and it kind of like weirds me out a little bit, to the point where I don't draw as well because I'm too self-conscious, I guess, so I'm not as free with my drawings, but I think it's just something I have to get used to. Okay, that's actually pretty good. He's got big ears, in this design at least. You'll obviously notice that the biggest change that I made when I redesigned the character, and you'll see the old design in some of the things I'll post. Like the thing I posted last week is the old design for how I drew the characters. You'll see that the biggest change is this nose, and I think that that kind of sets me apart. Okay, so here's a really important thing. Andy's nose comes up above his eyes and up below his eyes. He has a really big nose and kind of smaller eyes, and those help make him look a bit younger. And then his nose curves up a little bit. And one thing about the eyes of the characters in this style is that they can be either Cheeto shaped like this, or they can be like this, but it kind of depends on what look you're going for. And here he's just kind of bored and you know, not much is going on in his brain, so you know, the other look is more for kind of purposeful expressions, if that makes any sense, because you kind of would have to contort your face a little bit more to get a look like that. And he's just running on autopilot in this drawing. So he's got really thick Cheeto-shaped eyebrows. That actually looks pretty good. I don't hate that. His eyes are a little bit off. And that's really important for empathizing with the characters, is making sure that their eyes look really symmetrical. Not necessarily symmetrical, but that they don't look off, unless that's the look you're going for, which I'm not. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. So that's his face. The order isn't super important, but that's generally the order I go with, just getting those out of the way. I find that if I draw those after the face, that I end up making his forehead the wrong size, either too big or too small. So I usually do those first, then the head shape, then the sideburns, then the hair, and then the ears and the face, generally in about that order. So in this style, his face is pretty simple. But all of my characters have pretty complex looking clothes. So the clothes are where we start to see wrinkles and more complex shapes, whereas the face is a little bit less realistic. And I'm terrible at drawing like collars and hoodies and hoods and stuff like that, which is why I gave them to almost all of my characters, because I enjoy suffering. Just because, I mean, they're more interesting from a design perspective, but they can be pretty hard to draw. So at this point, we're just kind of sketching, but we're making adjustments as needed. So this was a little too front-facing, so I moved it over a little bit to the left. In this drawing, he has kind of slumped shoulders. And I paid really close attention in this drawing in particular to kind of the overall shape. So the shape is kind of a bean here, and then it kind of tapers off into, I don't even know what you'd call that shape, but it's like kind of this very purposeful curve, just to give him this really kind of bored, lazy look. He's just kind of done at the moment. Now, you don't want to go too far with the shapes to the point where it doesn't look like a human body. That's important. You kind of have to find a balance between like really interesting shapes and keeping the character as a character and not just a caricature, if that makes any sense. You want their look to be exaggerated enough that they have appeal, but not so exaggerated that you can't see them as a real human being with life and emotion and can't like empathize with them. That's pretty good, actually. Yeah. So it usually takes me quite a few tries to get the wrinkles just right, so I'm gonna wait on those and try to get the basic shape first. I'm feeling pretty happy with the overall body shape, so I'm not changing too much. Usually I try to get my sketch as close to the overall shape that I want as I can before I start doing a cleaner sketch. And this isn't necessarily the last one. It kind of is going to depend on how I feel about it once it's done. If I feel like I need to do another sketch over it because I changed a lot, then I might. But in this case, it's starting to look like this is probably going to be the final ink. That this is turning out how I imagined it. And curves are always difficult, so I just kind of, oops, yeah, there's my tablet glitching again, but I just kind of let my hand do the work, and if it doesn't come out right, I quickly Control-Z and do it again. That's kind of my own drawing process. You know, different things work for different people. It ends up being a bitch on my left hand, the Control-Z hand, though, so every now and then I have to kind of shake it out. But it keeps my lines pretty smooth, and, you know, kind of the alternative solution to that is use a program like Fire Alpaca where it smooths it for you, but I don't know, kind of maybe counterintuitive, is it feels to me like less control, so that's probably just my excuse for not wanting to change programs, because it can be pretty annoying to change programs as nice as the other programs are. But yeah, that's my I'm kind of a hypocrite because I'm gonna make all my animators use Fire Alpaca, but I don't want to. So around the clothes, I'm going for kind of a circular look. So lots of circles and bumps and round parts. And it's important when creating appeal in a character to do a combination of sharp angles and lines and round angles and lines, or at least that's what I've been told. I don't know if I necessarily agree, because overall he just has a pretty round thing, a pretty round aesthetic, and I think it suits him, but there's some lines and some sharpness, but overall, if a line is straight, it could probably look better if it's curved. Even the nose, which is a straight line, still has a bit of curve to it. And that will depend on the character. So, obviously, Andy has one of the more straight noses, more straight, long. And Meghan has a much more curved nose. But that's one of the ways that I keep all of the characters from having the same faces, is by doing some slight variations in the face, particularly the nose. And now you'll see over here, this maybe feels a little bit off. I'm still trying to decide how I want the character to look in profile. I originally had it, I'm not sure how fast I'm going to speed up the sketch, so you might be able to tell, you might not, but I kind of had it a bit like this, and then I decided to keep it more of like a clean oval, because my style, if you know the show, you can probably tell, is pretty strongly influenced by Steven Universe, and one of the main reasons why I changed the style, I mean, I'd always known that I was going to at some point have to decide what the final style for the show itself was going to be, and that it wasn't necessarily going to be how I was drawing it, but I made specific choices to kind of change it to diverge a bit from Steven Universe, just because this is my own show and it should have its own identity. And the biggest way I've done that is obviously with the noses. They're very different, but yeah, that kind of bump, bean shape is very Steven Universe. Obviously it's in other shows too, but because there's still a lot in my design that reads as Steven Universe, just because that's how I draw, because I learned to draw from Steven Universe, I'm just trying to differ it in as many ways as I can. Funny story, or not really funny, but just interesting. Sorry. I'm recording on my phone because my microphone is not working. I was in China over winter break while I was away from college, and I met the producer of an anime. The producer's name was Masaru Yokahagi, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he looked at my portfolio and my pitch packet for this show, and he only spoke Japanese, so I was talking to him through a translator, and he's looking at my portfolio, speaking obviously in Japanese, and then all of a sudden, I hear him say, in English, Steven Universe. And it was just really weird moment for this man who spoke a completely different language from me to say just Steven Universe out of the blue. And I was like, yes, Steven Universe. And then it turned out that what he was saying was, your style looks too much like Steven Universe, you need to change it, like you need to diverge from that. So that's one thing I really took to heart and have been trying to do, is just kind of change my style so it doesn't look exactly like that. I think that my show and that show will have a lot of similar audiences, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should look the same. So I'm trying to do whatever I can to change it, and obviously my style is still pretty similar, but I think it's at the point where you wouldn't see one of these characters and mistake them for a Steven Universe character, which is important. I'm getting to those wrinkles I hate so much, getting to the point where I can't avoid it. Now, I didn't do the strings on this one, and I haven't decided if I want to yet. I'm gonna put them on this one for now. I like them, but they do kind of distract in a way. So I need to make sure his body still looks like a body. It's important to kind of give him a bit of a booty. He's a trans guy, so he's gonna have some curves, but he also does the best he can to avoid showing them. And that's also part of the reason why he wears baggy clothes, is to hide his curves. But they'll show in certain angles, and, he wears a binder sometimes, but not all the time, and so when he's not wearing a binder, you'll see more curves. It's kind of a balance in his design between reading as a boy on screen. He's not a boy, by the way. He's a demiboy. He is not binary. So, for anyone who thinks he is, he's not. Fun fact. He would call himself a boy, but he would be bothered by anyone else calling him a boy, just because that kind of erases his non-binary identity. He would find himself doing the same sort of thing that I do as a non-binary person, which is just, if someone on the street misgenders him, he's not going to explain what non-binary is, or like what his gender identity is, because they're probably not going to understand, and he doesn't have the time for that. So he'd probably just be like, yo, I'm a guy, or like, I'm a boy, don't call me she, or don't call me whatever they called him. Even though that's not necessarily how he really identifies, it's just kind of a quick way of getting cis people off his back. So that would be, in those contexts, he might call himself a boy, but he definitely identifies as non-binary, or like with non-binariness. And that's about it. This drawing looks pretty good. Actually, I'm gonna go in and clean it up a bit. One thing that I've decided with the style is that I don't want to be a stickler about every line meeting every other line. Like here, obviously this like very much doesn't line up. I'm gonna clean that up a bit. Like, I think it's a bit too extreme here. It feels a bit too much like a sketch, as opposed to a finished frame. But I really like the suggestion of the motion, especially in these hands. I have given him kind of this poof on his arms, where it really bunches up at the bottom. I really like how that looks, and how I can kind of suggest it without actually drawing all of it, and it actually looks better than if I drew all of it. Yeah, so I'm gonna clean up these lines a bit, connect the shoulder here. What is this line? That's the other part of that doesn't need to connect, but I'll connect it here. Definitely want to, in fact, do I want to give him a thumb? I'd have to figure out, let's see. I always have to think for a second about which way thumbs are supposed to go. His thumb would be over on this side. So if I did give him a thumb, it would be... I actually like that, but I need to do it better. let me get the sketch back on. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay. Hands are just always difficult. Doesn't matter how long you've been drawing. Hands are difficult. If anyone says that they don't struggle with hands at all, ever, they're lying. I don't know if that's necessarily true. There may be people out there who struggle with different things. Like, I am pretty good, I think, at drawing feet. I actually really enjoy drawing feet, and I hate drawing shoes. I just like drawing naked feet. But I've heard that a lot of people have trouble drawing feet, which seems strange to me. See, this is where I don't really already have a sketch of this, so I'm kind of figuring it out as I go. And I don't want those lines to intersect. I'm gonna... So the most important things to make this character look like the character, if I was going to list them out, is the nose, you know, above the eye, below the eye, about even both ways. It looks really high here, but that's because his eye is half closed. And you're allowed to do some, like, detail in the face, like, I could have done this, made him look really concerned. In fact, I kind of like that, but, I'm probably just gonna leave it the way it is. Yeah. Actually, I might keep that. Yeah, you can do little bits of detail like that. Try not to keep the faces too detailed. The line for the head and the hair can be a little bit thicker, and in general around the outside can be a little bit thicker. Generally inside it's going to be a little bit thinner. That rule isn't so strict though. He wears, you can kind of see a t-shirt or a binder under his thing, so that peeks out there. I think I am going to go with strings, so something like that. I might clean that up more, but something like that, just kind of a simple line. No need to get any more complex than that, although it can, like, curve like that, or get blown, or jump around as he moves. The wrinkles can be pretty big. You don't need to draw every single wrinkle that would be on him in real life, but kind of where they make sense and where they help the character look a little bit more realistic, you can. His pants are a little too long, so they bunch up around his shoes, and because I hate drawing shoes, I've kept all the shapes kind of simplified, and just kind of these blobs, and that's okay. I'm gonna close these up. The more of these lines you can kind of close up more, the better. But it's fine to leave them where it helps the drawing, or where you don't want to draw it if it doesn't really distract or isn't unclear. How do pockets look? I don't even know. In his old design, he had a pocket here, but I think I'm taking that out because I think it just overcomplicates that form. Not all sweatpants have those, so I hate when I actually kind of like that better disconnected. See, that's a moment where I could connect it, but I think it actually looks a little bit better without it connected, so I'm not sure how I feel about this hand. The thumb looks okay. The fingers, I don't know. And it needs to bunch up more around. So it's important, obviously, to consider gravity as well as how it interacts with the body when looking at how to place things like bunched up pieces of the clothing. So, you know, his hand would probably be shaped like this, but instead of hugging it, it's kind of drooping down a bit more because it's heavy and it's being pulled down by gravity. So that's how that line comes about. I might actually even pull this out even a little bit farther. Have it go down. Let's see. Yeah, actually, I like that. Maybe a second one kind of suggested there. That's not really working. I think that looks pretty good. And this line's connected, which makes this one being disconnected look a little funny. So let's see if I can connect this up and have it look okay. Now that I'm actually playing with it, I'm realizing that it makes his arm look a little too short. So this is one of those cases where I'm going to take this, because I really like the smoothness of the line. I like how it tapers off. And I like its overall look, but it needs to be changed a bit. I'm going to warp it, and yeah, just have it look like that. I think that's a little bit better, and when you're doing that, it's important to look for those little breaks that sometimes happen, and I think that leaving this open is fine. I actually like that. It makes the work a little bit harder for the people that have to go in and color the frames, because they then have to go in and find every piece where it's disconnected, and fill those in before they can start using the paint bucket tool. But this looks so small that it almost looks like a mistake, so I'm actually going to push this a little bit more. This is looking maybe a little bit thin, so I'm going to push that. This doesn't really need to be disconnected, so I'm going to push that. That's not what I meant to do. Good. Okay. I need to figure out my keyboard shortcuts. I'm noticing kind of a little bit of a bump here that shouldn't be there, so I'm gonna... And if I'm being a real stickler for consistency, his shoes do not go up that high on the original drawing, so I'm gonna pull this down a bit and see if that looks okay. I mean, there's a little bit of fluidity and stuff like that, but I want to zoom out, but it won't let me when I'm doing that. Yeah, except now the line looks a little bit too thin. It can be really hard to trace over smooth lines like this, but it's just a lot of trial and error. That's why it takes me so long to draw something. It's because I draw them this way instead of learning how to actually draw good. Like how to get a steady hand. I also draw in quote-unquote the wrong way with my tablet. You're supposed to hold the tablet in front of you, and I always have it to the side. It's just how I learned to use it. And I've never killed that habit, so it's killer on my hands and also makes me less precise with my motions, so if you can avoid doing that, do. But yeah, this is looking pretty good. I like how this looks, and I'm comfortable with saying this could be a final drawing as part of the turnaround, so I may very well do that. Now, he has pockets here, so I don't know how... I mean, they can be implied. Like, I think how the way I might want to keep it is you don't see pockets when he doesn't have his hands in, but when he puts his hands in, you know, the lines kind of form around it, and they're just kind of invisible otherwise. I think that's fine. See, these are decisions I have to make and that I'm sometimes making on site. Now, I drew these on these layers, so I'm going to cut this, go to this one, and I had it set. Okay, good. That one's still set. Shift-Control-V is what I have set on all of my Adobe files for paste and place, because most Adobe programs don't have a good keyboard shortcut for that, and I use it all the time. So that's one of the first things I'll make sure to set if I'm using someone else's device is a paste and place shortcut. One more thing. I'm not quite loving this area right here. I think it's a little too unclear. I might look into reconnecting this again. Oh, and it's really important. Now, when you paste something, sometimes it'll make it its own layer, so I'm just gonna merge those layers. And then it's always important to remember to draw on the right layer if you can. it can cause a lot of problems if you draw on the wrong layer. I didn't really care when I was adding features to that other thing because I just needed a layer that wasn't the original one so that it would be easy to undo and change things if I wanted to, because I've already flattened out this drawing and all the colors in there, so if we're going to add detail, just do it on another layer. See, I actually like that better. It's a little bit clearer, but I also think that I can push these wrinkles a bit more. No, actually, how do I feel about that? I think I might kind of like that. Now these should line up though, unless I want it to be implied that it's more of a different bundle of the cloth, in which case, I don't hate that idea, but I need to draw this line out, because you can see with just that it looks like a mistake. But if I extend this line out, then it's clear that it's a different line. It implies that there's a whole other bump here, and so it does a lot of work without me having to actually draw in those lines. And I actually like that, so I'm going to leave it that way. And yeah, that's how you draw Andy Sarpeh from Maskers. Thanks for watching. Bye.